Hi, it's Jerry, and we are back today speaking with Kate Ford, career educator and a member of the Santa Barbara School Board. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I want to talk about some district stuff, the search for the superintendent, and then of course we're talking on Friday morning, and you had a long meeting last night about the grading policy. But I wanted to start with a little broader issue because I haven't heard a lot of conversation, at least in the community, about it. So put on your pedagogic theorist hat, and that's this big issue, which is, what is the impact of this shutdown and distance learning going to be on the students when, assuming hopefully they go back to school? And, the teachers are working their asses off, obviously, but no matter the amount of hard work, it's really going to be detrimental for student learning, at least based on the preliminary research I've been reading. So let me ask you this. The first thing is there's something called the summer learning loss in education. What is that, and is what we're doing now going to expand that?
Well, the easy short answer is, of course, it's going to expand it. I mean, there's always a learning loss, especially with younger kids or I'd say any human being, no matter what age. If you are busy learning, you're spending time reading, writing, computing, thinking, problem solving, and then you sort of stop for some fabulous experiences, whether they are sports or the arts or trips or just relaxing at home, there always is a learning loss. So teachers are very well prepared for that. Second grade teachers review lots of the things that happened in first grade. Eighth grade English teachers or math teachers are thinking about where their students are. But basically, you still have to meet kids where they are as they come through the door. But at the beginning of a school year, they always have lost something, and it's just part of teaching to review. Having said that, at this point, we know that it's going to be a completely different world next fall, no matter what. Yeah.
Now, the New York Times editorialized this week, and given the fact that it's a bunch of old white guys sitting around thinking, with their thesaurus, which
and edukeys or
okay, so they call this a potential catastrophe. A learning reversal of this magnitude could hobble an entire generation. You think that's overstated?
I think it's pretty melodramatic, but it's not something that we should ignore. And I'm so glad to say that all the educators I know and the leaders I know aren't ignoring it at all. I have I guess I'd call him a friend, professor at Harvard, Tom Kane, and he's referred to what is coming as a tsunami, an educational tsunami.
You mean in the wake of the pandemic shutdown?
Right. Not only a fiscal tsunami, which is a whole other issue, but just this idea that tsunamis change everything, and this will be a completely changed world. And he made some fabulous suggestions. I think it was in the last couple of days. And basically, it's just important for school districts and schools and states to hunker down and really figure out about online learning, and not only how to do it, but how to give teachers professional development for it. And also, really figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And the one thing that we've seen is such a challenge everywhere, it's a challenge in Santa Barbara too, is finding those kids and keeping kids. Because I think that once we figure out what are the best materials, and once teachers really understand how to provide this sort of hybrid of learning, whether it's in person, whether it's with, I think they're calling it synchronous learning, where you have the class online with Zoom, or individualized, personalized learning, computer assisted learning, they call CAL. We just have to figure out how to do that very fast. And what I like about education is, or the best educators I know, districts and schools, are that they are nimble. And I see this as something that is very exciting for the future, because as I said at a couple board meetings ago, I don't think education will ever be the same. And
yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay. So there's one study out there that says perhaps as much as 30 to 40% reading loss among students and math loss of about 50%. In other words, of the gain that they've made this year. Do you think that's in the ballpark?
It could be, but what I love is that people are really thinking outside the box now. Is, you know, the four walls of a classroom are sort of a box, and I love thinking outside that box. So what are we missing in terms of one-on-one tutoring, or what are we missing in terms of online tutoring? I think there are all kinds of opportunities for that we sort of haven't always been great about thinking about, but so much is being done right now. I really like the responsiveness that I've seen. You know, I know a former student, Maggie Miller from Santa Barbara, a fabulous student, has started a new program called Tutor the Future, where she's combining her college friends from UCLA with students here in Santa Barbara and giving them tutoring, whatever age they are. And I think that they're, you know, you've probably heard of Khan Academy, a computer assisted learning program, but now it's being used on a really wide basis. So I guess to answer your question, of course, the loss is going to be significant, but teachers and leaders and support staff, we just don't sit around and sort of say, oh, well, that's too bad. I expect to be part of a movement that changes things and really tries to figure out how to get kids up to speed.
All right, let me ask you real quick just about a couple of specific groups that might be at more risk, and if you have thoughts on it. First of all, fifth graders, I understand, are in sort of an inflection point place in terms of their educational development. Do you think that there's going to need to be some sort of special program for fifth graders? Kids are in fifth grade this year when we start school again, hopefully in the fall.
Well, I don't see that quite as big of an issue in Santa Barbara. I don't have the data for you, but because we are, for the most part, K-6 schools, there's an opportunity to have a lot of interaction between fifth and sixth grade. I think some of that data comes from districts where elementary is K through 5, and then you go to middle school at 6. That's already a huge jump and very, you know, very significant. So perhaps for Santa Barbara, there might be a huge a jump and an opportunity to give lots of extra assistance from sixth graders going to 7th.
How about English learners, EL?
Oh, it's so tough. It's so tough. I think that this is the group that I'm most worried about. There are programs online for students, and I've seen teachers be particularly thoughtful and helpful about it, but this group is in trouble, and so are special education students.
Yeah, that was my next question. Because that it seems to me, does not necessarily lend itself to online distance learning with special education needs, whether it's speech therapy or occupational therapy or other things like that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was just reading an article the other day where not only those students that you mentioned, but students who are autistic, this is a very tough time for them. Number one, they have a hard time with any changes in routine, any. And this has been, you know, has turned education upside down, but also just the whole idea of not being around the people that they know, et cetera. So I think that what I've seen, though, is that a lot of people are rushing to help. There are organizations throughout the country that are offering their assistance and offering guides. And I think that our support staffs at the schools, and I hope this is happening everywhere, but I know it is in Santa Barbara, whether they're counselors or the special education department, even administrators are really reaching out to those students. But this is a very serious concern. Special education, English learners, and of course, those students who come from a lower socioeconomic.
What about the achievement gap? Is that gonna widen here, do you think?
It will probably widen. It will probably widen, but I think, you know, I have been thinking about it in terms of it being an opportunity gap, so that you really try to figure out what opportunities are being missed by those particular groups, and then you do your best to try to figure those out. I think this coming summer is an opportunity for us to really do some serious thinking about how we meet the needs of those particular students, especially given the fact that we really don't know if we'll be back to school in any particular predictable way in the fall.
Yeah, yeah. I always forget what a glass half full kind of guy you are. You know, I guess.
Yeah, did you want me to just tear apart but my colleagues and my life work?
No, I'm one of those old white guys using the thesaurus there with the catastrophe. That's why. Now, all right. Well, let me ask you this, since you're very solution oriented. So, I do think the premise of my question, and seriously, is assuming we go back in the fall and however that looks. It's not a status quo. Oh, the new school year is starting. There's a whole new set of problems and issues that have to be addressed. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And some existing problems are exacerbated.
Yes. So in terms of an agenda for that, can I just throw a couple things out and ask you if you think how important a part of it, for example, diagnostic testing. Do we need to test all? Yes. Okay. And what does that look like?
Well, it's interesting. Tom Kane also addressed that recently. He was saying that the states have really got to take the lead on this, because what we've seen in the past is that districts sort of have done what they could. Charter school management organizations, private schools, everybody sort of does what they think is best. And he was suggesting that states need to take the lead on diagnostic testing, because if we don't have a better idea of how students are doing right at one moment, this has been the biggest challenge I think teachers have had, is a lot of times teachers are just guessing. And I know I did when I was a teacher. I would say that kid's probably way behind. Now, there are lots of tests that are out there, but I do think that has to be a major focus. And it's something that is totally manageable. We can do this.
And what about remedial plans? Should we be thinking about maybe repeating this year, repeating a semester, expanding the school year into the summer over vacations? What's your thought on that?
Well, I don't think that we have the wherewithal to do that. That's such a big financial issue, tell you the truth. We can't significantly change the lives of teachers without a lot of work and negotiations. But I do think that there's an opportunity for us to, as I was saying before, think about different ways to do school. For example, if it turns out that because of social distancing, we are required to have smaller class sizes, so perhaps there will be an effort to have 10 or 15 kids from 8 to 12 in the morning and 10 or 15 kids in a classroom from 1 to 5. There still might be a great opportunity for things to happen for that group of 10 in the morning to get some special instruction in the afternoon, particularly if they're English learners or they're students with disabilities. So again, I don't want to sound too Pollyannish, but this can be done. All we have to do is really start to think about what kids need. And if we're really going to go way outside conventional practice, then we can be super creative. And it does seem like our governor is really open to that. And I'm excited about the possibility.
What about outreach? There's been a lot of reporting and conversation about families that didn't have Wi-Fi, basically, that didn't have an internet. Even as I understand, some people that do have internet, kids aren't showing up, or they're not participating in the online learning. Does there need to be a stepped up outreach program to try to reconnect with families when we go back?
Oh, for sure. Although I think that has to happen right now. And I know that at least in Santa Barbara Unified, there's a huge effort to do that. I was communicating with Todd Rickman just the other day, and
IT guy, the district IT guy, Todd Rick.
district IT guy, but he's really been quite visionary about this. He's developed a very good relationship with Cox. And also we have, there was, for the first few weeks, I'm not sure if it's still up, but there was a helpline. So students and parents were encouraged to call if they were having trouble getting online or if they were having trouble accessing anything. And then now there's a whole advocacy group that's been formed with a few different support staff and leaders at the district, which is acting sort of as the ombudsman for parents and families that are still having trouble getting online or having trouble with technology, and being that conduit between Cox and between the district and families. So I think all of those things have to be strengthened. And to your question, we have to do that right now because we've already had trouble finding students. I mean, throughout the whole country, you know, the lives of so many of our families are so different. If parents have been laid off and aren't working, they may have just left the area. And so we have a lot of work to do to try to find out where our students are, the ones that haven't been signing in, and try to figure out a way to get them engaged.
Do you have a sense or a metric of how many students we're talking about in that category?
No, but I think at first it was easily 50%, and I'm hoping that it's down to maybe 25 or 30% now.
Wow.
But
So
you can think of all the reasons why someone wouldn't be
sure.
online. I mean, some don't have the motivation to be online. The state has not required anyone to be online, and that's right, because we can't actually require that kids or their families have the kinds of settings that are conducive. But so I think that some of it, you know, whatever that percentage is, we're trying to address it and lessen it and lessen it and lessen it so that by the fall, we should know where everyone is and we should be ready to serve them.
And then the last piece you mentioned that a lot, you know, there hasn't been a lot of training for teachers on distance learning, on virtual learning.
Right.
And that's one of the ways that obviously we and every school district in America were unprepared. I mean, how could you be, I suppose, prepared for this, although the states might have been better prepared. So do we need to have sort of a, you know, a mass action plan for something like this going forward we need to establish, or is that going to be fighting the last war?
No, I think that's absolutely a major part of the next step. And it's actually happening now. I've seen that there are many YouTube videos for teachers. There are lots of people who are actually reaching out. I mean, you and I have discussed that there are all kinds of resources on how to do Zoom better and how to access videos better, but there also are podcasts now about online teaching. And as I said, there are some new and very excited computer assisted programs. So I think that there are all kinds of ways to reach teachers. The part that is difficult is that one of the best ways that teachers always have connected in the past was with each other on their campuses, and that's what's lacking. But I know that lots of principals are holding daily, if not very frequent meetings with their staff and addressing all of the issues that are happening. But to your point, absolutely, we can't do any of this without a greater focus on professional development for online learning for the teachers.
All right. All right, let's talk about some school board stuff. So last night, Wednesday night, April 23rd, you had a Zoom meeting and approved a policy for grading for this semester. And basically, tell me if I got this right, elementary kids in the early grades will just have a consult with the teacher, basically. Middle grades will have a pass-fail, and then high school students would have the option of pass-fail or taking a grade. What their grade would have been, what was it, March 13th when the school shut down. Is that an accurate description of what you approved?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll just clarify a couple of things about what you said. First of all, to me, it's important to remind ourselves of the foundation that the state set. The state said, number one, that we have to create a grading system that meets the kids where they are and also meets their needs. And two, that the goal has to be that there is no harm done. So, as you know, grades can sometimes do harm. So to clarify, at the elementary level, I think that it will be a teacher sort of evaluation, kind of like what I had at UC Santa Cruz, where there'll be some sort of written reflection and probably individual conversations about progress. You were right on that. We're not using the terms pass fail, we're using the terms credit, no credit. And I think that that's a perfect way to approach it in junior high, although I know that we had a number of parents who wished that their students were still being able to work or choose grades in junior high, but our new policy is credit, no credit in junior high. And then at the high school level, yes, students, the default is credit, no credit, but students can also opt for a grade with the understanding of the no harm policy, which is that the baseline grade is the one that was established on March 13th, and that it can only stay the same or improve.
Right.
That's what we voted in last night unanimously.
All right. And then you also had a executive session discussion about the search for a new superintendent. And I know you can't talk about the specifics of that, but can you kind of give us a frame where we are in terms of the process and number of candidates and, you know, how it looks from here?
Oh, I'm so excited. And sure, I'll just give you a little bit of backstory because it started in January with the choice of the search firm. And then after that, for about 6-7 weeks, we were meeting with different community groups and different school groups to establish an idea of what priorities were coming from within our community. And that led to a very specific job description and criteria. And then we had open applications. And by the time, and then COVID-19 hit. So this was all coming together right in March. So we extended the application date, and that helped because my understanding is that we got just as many applications as one would hope for a beautiful town and city like Santa Barbara. And
really, so the pandemic didn't really depress the number of people who were interested.
I was really afraid of that, and it didn't. I think it really helped that we extended the application date, though, because that did give people, wherever they are and whatever positions they're in, a chance to sort of get that place a little under control, and then they could send in their applications. So at this point, what has happened is that the search firm and our search consultants, Ben Johnson and Daryl Adams, have whittled that group of 50 down to about 8 to 10. And those were the candidates that we reviewed last night. And I have to tell you, I'm so excited to see the skill level, the passion level, the experience level that we're going to be able to take a look at. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll also review all of their video interviews and sort of combine those with their resumes, their letters, etc., and the results of the reference checks that come from the search firm, and then we will decide on finalists. And you know, it would be reasonable to think that we'd have between 3 and 6 finalists. It really just depends. Hoping that the final interviews are later in the month of May, and that by the end of May, we have a new superintendent named. And the interview process will involve not only the board, but also we have a community group that will be interviewing the finalists also.
And I assume those will all be Zoom interviews, virtual interviews?
That's the plan.
Yeah, okay. We got 3 minutes left, so, but I got 2 important questions to ask you. Are the students going back to school in September?
Do you expect me to have a crystal ball, Jerry Roberts?
Well, give me your best guess.
They will. I think they will. But I'm not sure school will look at all the same.
Well, what form that will be in.
That's right.
We talked earlier about staggered and so on and so forth. But
Fewer kids at recess, fewer kids in the classroom, probably more online opportunities at a very basic minimum.
All right. And then just in 30 seconds, how does the budget look? I mean, the state of California, I mean, this is a big wave that's just out there that everybody's kind of looking at. State of California is going to lose 1 out of 5 tax dollars. And that, of course, the state is the primary funding mechanism for local school districts. Counties are going to get hit, cities are going to get hit. Have you had any discussions, preliminary discussions about what the magnitude of that will look like for the Santa Barbara Unified School District?
We haven't talked specifics about the magnitude. We know that it's going to be great. And I appreciate that you laughed when you asked the question, because if you don't laugh, you will cry. It's going to be bad. And I know that was it just yesterday that another $13.5 billion was approved and will be allocated to the states. The states will send the money to the districts. The districts will then send them, especially to meet the needs of the Title I students. But 13.5 billion divided amongst all of us in this country of ours is still not enough. So it will be possibly devastating, and we're all holding our breath to see if there are some other ways we can rescue this, but the state is in big trouble.
Yeah. So you're really looking ahead. I mean, on the positive side, getting a new superintendent, there's always something good with a fresh start, but gee, you're trying to deal with the fallout from the shutdown and from the pandemic and sort of reinventing school on the fly at the same time. You're going to have substantially less resources to deal with that. So,
oh, for sure. And we're spending money like crazy right now, which we should be. I mean, for example, serving anyone who wants breakfast and lunch without any of the requirements that we've had in the past. So there are many things that we have spent a lot of money on in the last 6 weeks that we will continue to spend money on, and that's a loss. And even personnel that aren't working. So, between personnel and programs, it could be very difficult.
All right. Okay. And now the last question, and really the most important question, what about high school sports? How are you going to guard somebody on the basketball court from 6 feet away? Are we going to have high school sports? Seriously, what's going to happen? Have you talked about that at all?
We haven't had any conversation about sports because, as you can well imagine, I mean, honestly, it's not the most important thing. And the most important thing is engaging kids, taking care of their mental and emotional health, and making sure teachers have support. But I understand your concern about sports, and I think as soon as the whole
now you've shamed me. Sports shaming. Nice.
How could you make that the last question? You should have. I mean, look at my posters. You should have asked me about what about the arts? What about the
next time we'll get to
okay.
that. Kate Ford, thank you very much. You've been such a great change agent and influence on the Santa Barbara School Board in terms of opening up, and I know you ran on a platform of transparency, and I have to say, as someone who covered the campaign and has also watched the school board, you have really worked hard to fulfill that promise. And
well, you're so kind to say so. Thank you. It's my honor to be on the board, and as challenging as it is from time to time, I have to admit I love it.
All right, Kate, thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm going to turn